I was watching a video the other day. I try to watch, when I do watch, stuff that's not always related to the topic in hand. You know, it's nice to get away from the saving humanity, from the Luciferians or the Satanists or the bankers or anybody really who's got us in, you know, the WEF and the WHO and all the corporates and everything else. And it's nice just to sort of move away and watch something completely unrelated, to relax and take your time over things. And I do tend to have a sort of much more solitary life. Of course, the lovely Julia is in my life, and sometimes we'll watch some old-fashioned movies, and maybe we'll talk about the projects that we want to do in our sort of little small holding as and when we get there. Anyway, I was watching this video, and it was a chap. He does have his own land, and he's in America, and he has his own little hobby that he was doing, and I was watching a bit of that. And he was just discussing a few things, and he said an interesting thing that made me sort of bolt upright a bit. And he said, and I have heard this before, that he thought that according to his religion, and he's quite religious, and that's not why I watch him, but he said children are born bad. And I thought, what do you mean by that? He in subsequent videos, he would talk a little bit about that, in that they would get up to mischief, and that they needed, in his eyes, they needed the help from the Lord to see the light, as it were. And I've heard this argument in the past, and I disagree with it completely. I don't think children in any way are born bad. They're born innocent. Now, I'm not saying they're not coming with perhaps a previous life or previous lives that are being born with them, and they may have those memories and they may not, and those memories may be being wiped, who knows. But as they're born into this life and they grow up and being nurtured and cared for and introduced to the world, I would say that if anything, they are born absolutely innocent, but they are born good. And what do I mean by that? I mean that I think in each and every one of us, inherent in us, pretty much all of us, I would say, is the notion that we know what is good and what is bad. And I think as we grow up, and of course we're influenced by our parents, our friends, maybe our guardians who are bringing us up, teachers, the television, of course, media, and now, of course, the social media and all of that on our phones, that we are losing sometimes some of that what's inherently come with us. We might be adding it to, like a cake, layering ourselves up, but there ought to be that main ingredient, I would think, that sense of we know what is good. And yet there are people in this world who think they're doing good, but they're not at all. Now, we know that there is a small number of people who are controlling as much of the world as they like, and they would like to have as much more control. Billionaires who've got so much money they can do anything they want, that anything they want to do becomes a bit boring because it's too easy. They can just buy things. They don't have to work hard for it. They don't need the aspirations for it. They can do whatever they damn well like. And so when you get to that position, when you can do whatever you damn well like, what have you got left? What are you aspiring to other than controlling people and controlling the world? And as we can see, there are plenty of those people who are at that top level where they've lost the sense of what is meaningful anymore, and they've become so bored, so stupid, so dull and devoid of human spirit that they just want to now control the world. And we've seen how they're doing that, and their ideas, that when they come together and start to get other people to carry out their ideas, are being filtered down to the governments, to the councils, and we see that on our street when we have these ridiculous policies that are coming to us, like driving at 20 miles an hour in Wales all over the place, or the cameras, the surveillance, the net zero policies, that element of control that's coming in with the digital IDs, the CBDCs, pushing everything online, getting rid of everything to do with analog, and losing our autonomy and our privacy as wherever we go. And this, I think, has come from these people right at the top who are so bored that they can, a hobby is no longer there. It's not just about, you know, go fishing, go traveling, climb a mountain, do something challenging. They're not bothered on any of that. They just want to control people now, because that's kind of the godlike thing, is the ultimate area they want to get to. They must know inherently that that is wrong, but they might not, because perhaps there is a point where you go past what you and I would know as being right and wrong, and they're now blind, totally blind to what they're doing. They don't see that people in pain, in poverty, struggling is in any way wrong. They only see what they need for themselves. That's the very, very top layer of people. And I say top, and I don't mean in an aspirational way. I mean, they are the dirt of the world because of their attitude and the way they do things. They are actually on the bottom of intelligence, really. They may be clever people and they may be able to buy things. They can't survive on their own. Strip them naked, put them on a desert island without their money and resources and their friends, and they are useless. They wouldn't know what to do. They're hopeless. They are hopeless people who have no ability, and with their mental attitude, they wouldn't get any help from anybody, because who's going to come and save them? So going back now to where we are, the general populace, people in general, I think we know inherently what is right and what is wrong. We know that murder, for example, is wrong, and yet somehow some of us, not me, and most likely not you, have done it. Or we've even said it in jest, I'd like to murder him, whatever, which we know actually the carrying out of it is wrong, and even the suggestion of it really is probably a very grey area, isn't it? It's probably not a good thing to wish somebody else deceased or removed. We might wish that they became enlightened, could repent for their bad things, and that they make amends. But it's probably a bad thing to wish anybody ill in that way. Although, you know, just wishing people would leave us alone would be I think is perfectly well. Though wishing in and of itself is probably not a good thing. Wishing is sort of wishy-washy, isn't it? It's kind of not one thing or the other. It's hoping that something will happen, but not believing it really will. But that's a subject for another video. I think people inherently are good, and they get compromised. They lose what's inside them. And I think that's where we are at the moment. Because to me, there's a number of people who are working in corporations, these dead entities, these for-profit businesses, like the council, like the government, and like many of these larger corporations, who have found themselves in a position that they are being put on by tiers above them, by a hierarchy above them, maybe a line manager, maybe their CEO, maybe a government official, who knows, that they're being put upon to carry out services and to treat people beneath them, or indeed their customers, with huge amounts of disrespect and what I would class as just badness. You know, carrying out some of these contracts with people, knowing that it's bad for them. So I get emails from people saying, Richard, I don't know what to do. The council want to take my children away, and I'm struggling. I can't pay the council tax. I'm in arrears. I've got this problem and this problem through, you know, no fault of my own or just circumstances. Perhaps we've all made bad decisions. And then these big companies, they want their money. And the thing about that is, you know, a lot of these big companies, they could wipe the debt out. They could say, OK, we'll make some repayments. Perhaps we won't charge you interest. You are a customer of ours. But instead of that, they treat people with huge disrespect and penalise people. And these are the people, these are ordinary, everyday people who are working for these corporations. A friend of mine is being penalised and got at by the police for a crime. It's not a crime. It's not a crime, an incident. You notice how the police often talk about incidents. They don't necessarily say crimes, because some things that do not have a victim and nobody's hurt or there's no damage to anybody's property, it's not a crime. That's a crime. But going through a speed camera that's changed at the last minute and captured you driving at 2 o'clock at night when there's nobody on the road, the conditions are all safe, and it just changes for no apparent reason. The lights come on and flash you, and you're then charged. And even if you pay it, as my friend did, and then they come back and say, oh, you didn't give us your driving licence number, and so therefore we're penalising you. So the original fine might be £100, but they're penalising you because you didn't send in. 4 months later, they've realised, oh, you didn't send in the driving licence number. We're going to charge you £700, and if you don't pay it, we're going to take you to court with possibly a potential imprisonment. Take your property and all of that. Now, the people who are doing that, the people who are writing those letters, who are sending that out, where's their morals? Where are they going, look, there's no real crime. He just drove and the light changed. There's nobody on the road. What happened? What difference was there? If the light didn't flash, would the world have changed any? Would anybody have got hurt? No. Why are we charging him money? Why are we doing so many of these things to extract money from people who are very often struggling and in a worried condition and are now made miserable by the pressure of paying for something which is totally unnecessary? Where is their moral compass, those people? Because to me, that's bad. That these people who inherently have the good in them are working for companies who are making them do bad things, and they don't care. And this is a very, very scary and frightening state of affairs in my world. Because when you work for yourself, when you work on your own wits, and you charge people for a service, and you look at them and you realise that they're struggling. For me, when I was doing that sort of stuff, I would, in the entertainment business, people would say, can you come and do a party, a 40th birthday party, or it'd be a big corporation, can you come through an agent and entertain 100, 1,000 people round the tables, all that sort of stuff, or do a charity thing. I would look at them and I would charge different rates. And if people couldn't afford it and I had nothing else to do, I would go and do it. I would, you know, you would change to help people out because that's what it was. It wasn't that I was greedy and just needed the money and would say, nope, that's my rate, come hell or high water. And in this business, people have asked me to do talks at various places and they say, what's your fee? And I say, well, I don't really have a fee. Just if you'd like me to come and talk about the things I talk about on this channel, I'm more than happy to do that. If you can cover the costs of the diesel for me to get there, and if there's any extra on top, that would be lovely. And some people have paid me handsomely and others have paid me not very much, but it hasn't been, I haven't minded, because I'm doing this because it's important. I feel that what I'm doing, the things I say are important, and the fact that people want to listen, that's great. And I'm prepared to go to places and do things, and so is lovely Julia, go, you know, with me. We don't do this because we're desperately trying to be rich, or we're trying to fleece people and say, that's our policy, come what may, if you can't afford it, end of. I've had this used with utility companies, as I'm sure we all have, where you've been with them, loyal to them for years. And then something happens and you want to change, and they say, no, you're locked into this. And you say, I found a better deal somewhere else, to be honest with you, and I'd like to go there. Where they say, well, in order to get out of this contract, you've got to pay this amount of money. And you say to them, now listen, look, I've been with you for 20 years. I've been loyal with you. I haven't changed at any other point. I'd like to move on now, may come back. If you charge me this extortionate amount to get out of this contract, I probably will never come back. And I will probably tell people that you've been in this mean way and whatever. Well, we don't care, they say. That's our policy and we're not moving, we're not budging, we can't change. Now, the people working in that and ringing up you and you're ringing them up and they're answering and you're telling them the problem and they're saying, no, no, we can't budge. I know it's not their fault as such. But when you work for these companies whose policies are so rigid, and I do understand how commerce works and how contracts work. Most of these contracts anyway are null and void because that both parties did not negotiate these contracts. They call them agreements, don't they? And mostly the general public who's been in with a utility company has not had an opportunity to say have electricity and agree to the contract by all the terms. May go, I don't really like that, but I have no choice. If I want the electricity, I have to say yes. There's no negotiation. To me, that puts people in a bad thing because the monopoly is there and people need it. I think those contracts really are null and void. But I understand that those people who work at these companies are being under pressure, of course, by their line manager and all of that, to say, no, we can't change out of it. You've just got to extract the money. But here's the thing. These corporations that are dead entities, that are concepts, that do not live and breathe, that could not exist without humans, human beings, men and women. Got to get my terms correct there. Human is the colour of man, hue, the hue of man, human. Men and women. Those men and women that work for these corporations, they're the ones that make the corporation work. Without men and women employed by these concepts, these for-profit concepts like the council, like the government, like any of the other big companies that we know, they could not exist without people working for them. So my question is, why do people, I know the answer because we're in an upside down world, but why do people who have a moral compass work for these corporations that they know inherently is doing bad things for people? Because at the end of the day, it comes down to us. It comes down to whether we think it's good or bad, whether it's right or wrong. And if we're working for these big corporations and we know that we are affecting people badly, that it is having a negative effect on people's lives, if it is causing misery by just enacting the policies of a dead corporation as living men and women, if we know the person on the phone is saying, please can I get out of this contract because I can't afford it, I'll pay you up to here but I can't afford to pay the other 8 months, I need to stop, I need to do something else because the cost of living is too much, and you're the one on the phone going, I'm really sorry mate, but that's the policy, because you don't care, or you've been made not to care, or your line manager is saying, look, if you don't adhere to this, you're out. And we've got into that situation where we can't afford to lose our jobs because there's other people who are equally good but are being forced to do bad things on us, so that we have to maintain this debt-ridden society, bringing misery to everyone. Somehow, we've got to step back from that. And I would urge those people who work for corporations that when your time is finished at these corporations, that you set up your own business with your own morals, that you set up a business that doesn't penalise other people, that you don't work for other corporations. Because if the people take themselves out of the corporations and understand their own moral compass and really get back in tune with themselves and know what's good and what's bad, we'll have a far, far better world just on that very simple thing of understanding what is good. And if these people want me to do this, which hurts those people, I'm out of here. Imagine a world in which mostly it is sole traders, partnerships, family-run businesses with people with good morals who want to do good for the rest of the world. Those small number of people flying about in their private jets who want to control everything. Once you take away the people enacting their stuff, all the way down to the corporations that we end up dealing with, once you take away those people, they have nothing and they can do nothing and they'll wither on the vine. We know what's good and what's bad. And I think it's about time we got back in control with what is good and we started to do more good things.